Oh, hello there. Yes, well, good grief. That was windy and wet, wasn't it? Yes, a little bit. Not much where I am because, hey, we're sheltered here. Yeah, you get the weather you pay for, and people in this part of the world pay a lot for their weather, I'm pleased to say. I'm shielded by the umbrella of, well, nice middle class people. There might be a metaphor there for some economists. Anyway, today I thought we'd talk about education because it appears to be in the wind. Yes, not the actual wind. I mean, it's just the winds of change, which of course are sweeping across the African continent, as somebody once famously sang. Yes, anyway, the Labour Party have suggested that there might be a good idea to have a radical rethink of the national curriculum, because after all it's been quite a few years, as in about 15, and it probably would be, but I would like things to go a little bit further because that's the sort of radical guy I am. Yes, if you're going to change a little bit, you might as well change a lot, because people get really hacked off with change, don't they? So you might as well go all in on it. Now, there are a number of problems, of course, because the last government basically embedded the notion of people staying in education until they're 18, one way or another. So we might as well go with that as a concept. Simple, right? Okay, so why therefore do we have all these exams at 16? People to this day are slightly unsure about that. You know, the ones that actually think about it, as opposed to, well, the leader writers and indeed the comments section of the Daily Telegraph, who just don't like teachers because they're not productive, in the same way that, you know, they really do like things like estate agents because they add so much value to the economy. Apparently. Anyway, yes, we have had quite a lot of change, actually, in the last 15 years. Most of it has been quite negative. You may remember, oh God, some of them. Let's have a think, shall we? Gavin Williamson, yeah, there's a name to conjure with. A watchword for incompetence in a way that was barely matched. Well, there were a few that were slightly more than him. But I will remind you that we did actually have such people as Michelle Donelan, yes. Who's she? Well, she was Education Secretary for 2 days, yes. Do you remember that period with Boris Johnson when they started to kick him out? And basically people were just simply only in post for maybe a week or two, or in her case, 2 days. So those of us in the education system are quite used to, you know, loads of change. Famously, I think it was Nicky Moran. She decided that there wasn't going to be any major changes under her, and then decided there were going to be all of these major changes, which us as teachers had about 3.5 seconds to get used to. Yeah, she actually used to send out memos about things that needed to happen next week, a bit like Gavin Williamson did. He was famous, perhaps most famous in my mind, for deciding to reopen the schools at the height of COVID, because everyone was saying the schools need to be open, and then immediately backtracking, but only after the kids had been there for a day. Yeah, thanks, we'll never see that week off at half term. Speaking of which, of course, I mean, you know, if you're going to do things in education, then you might as well make it wholesale. You might as well just reorganise the school year to start in January. I know it'll be a bit of change and it'll be a bit painful, and some people are, ooh, isn't it dreadful we're missing our GCSEs, which is the standard argument about kids and VAT. But it'll only have to happen once. The universities will be more than happy with the idea of selecting pupils on the basis of their actual A-levels. Why don't we do that? Because we're not very sensible. And indeed, people like me would be very, very pleased about it, because we wouldn't have one very, 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 very long term, followed by another term which can be quite long but usually isn't, and then another long term when not a lot happens. It isn't a very good way of organising the year. Yes, why do we have 2 weeks off at Easter? Because the kids might be giving up things for Lent. Can think of all those kids in school that you know, probably even in your day, who didn't give up things for Lent, but nevertheless have to have 2 weeks off at Easter. It's the law because Jesus said so. Yeah, those kind of things I would get rid of. But the whole thing about the actual national curriculum that we need to ask ourselves is, what exactly do you need to know at 16 that might be useful when you're a bit older? And in terms of English, maths and science, it's not a lot. Now, I'm not suggesting that kids don't do things like additional maths and additional science, but realistically, do they need to spend 2 years studying English literature like they do at present? Do they need to spend 2 years doing vast amounts of algebra like they do at present at GCSE? One can only say no. I know, some of you will argue that you're going to do things move later on in life. Algebra. No, you don't, do you? Okay, it's the same with the sciences. Now, if you're going to have a generalised certificate of education, like the old GCEs as they used to be at 16, you might as well sort of go there. You can get kids to sit an exam just to prove they can read and write. What more do you need? Well, the answer is, we want skills for the 21st century. Yeah, fine, okay, but realistically getting all kids to do, for example, a third of their sciences based on producing sulfur salts is a bit debatable. Sorry. Also, I don't know, studying a Shakespeare play. You might think it's useful. Well, maybe it is, but get the kids that actually wanted to do it to do that. Allow kids to think about what they might want to do when they're 14, not necessarily hard and fast, but then think about what might, in a generalised sense, be useful in real terms to know at 16. And I know, I'm sorry, it isn't algebra. And no, I'm sorry, it isn't knowing Henry IV Part 2. And no, I'm sorry, it isn't sulfur salts. Yeah? Let's have an honest and grown-up discussion without Conservative Party leader writers melting down because the person going through the education national curriculum isn't to their liking. Well, yeah, welcome to my world, eh? Anyway, that was rather rambly, but you get the point, yeah? Why don't you ask someone like me what I think, yeah? As opposed to loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of people who, because they went to school 40 years ago, are experts. Yeah. Tell you the one thing mainly though, okay? I'm over 60 and I don't work in schools and I'm shattered this term, okay? This term is too long and the kids are dead, I'm dead, and it does nobody any good. And the reason why we continue doing this is because a small number of parents know each year in advance that they're going to be able to go for their 6-week holes to their timeshare resort in Lanzarote. And that's why we end up with this system. It doesn't work, it needs to be got rid of. Anyway, do have a beautiful Sunday. Don't forget to go to church, or, conveniently, if I were you, do forget to go to church. Makes a lot more sense. More duvet time? Much better.